Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Heavy Water 77. Love doing this show, man. Love talking about Styx. My name is Jerry, and I couldn't do it without my co-host here. So, Joseph Starman, how you doing?
Doing great. Excited to be back talking about yet another Styx album. Here we are on the third Wooden Nickel album, almost wrapping up the Wooden Nickel era. We got a cool idea for a show when we finish all four of the Wooden Nickel albums, so you guys will get to see that here in a few weeks. But we're talking about the third Styx album today, The Serpent is Rising.
Yeah, it's an interesting album because I know the band was not happy at all with the way this album turned out for some reason. I mean, I don't know why. I think it sounds great in my opinion, but what do you got some backstory behind this album, Joe?
Yeah, so like I do for the past couple episodes, this album was released on October 1st, 1973, so pretty quick turnaround from the last album. It was
Few
also
months,
recorded
right?
at, yeah, just a few months, I think
Yeah.
maybe barely 6 months. So they were right back in the studio
Right.
after Styx 2 came out because, as we talked about last week, Styx 2 was not a success off the bat. It took a couple years for the Lady to break through on radio. They were already signed with A&M by the time that Lady was a hit.
Mhm.
And so they went right back into the studio. I'm sure the record label said, well, let's try another one. So they went back in the studio, recorded this over the summer of 1973. The record was released October 1st, recorded at the Paragon in Chicago, just like the two previous albums were. There was one track that was actually recorded at a cathedral in Chicago. We'll talk about that when we get to it. But this album was produced by Styx and Barry Mraz, who had not produced with the band at this point. They had had that same producer on the. A lot of people claim that this is actually a sort of a loose concept album, and the concept is basically sexual innuendos. And we'll kind of talk about that as we go through some of the songs here. But a lot of these songs have some sexual undertones about them, and I think that might be part of the reason that the band's not too big of a fan of this album. Because I agree with you, like production wise, I think it sounds fine, but I think the band, like, apparently, I read that Dennis DeYoung just despises this album,
Yeah.
just hates everything about it, the songs, the production, just everything. And there's parts where I can see where he's coming from, so
Yeah, I mean,
I'm
it's
interested
pretty
to
much
see
it
what
was
we'll,
pretty
we'll
much he
think
was
here.
married. Yeah, he was pretty much a married man at that time, and probably didn't like talking about
Yeah,
a certain woman's body part in one of the songs. But
yeah,
yeah, all in all, in whole, I think it's a pretty good rock and roll album, man. So interesting is this is like the only one of the four I noticed that they had a different producer. Then 'cause I
mm-hmm.
think during the next album they go back to the producer who did the first two albums. So that's kind of interesting too. What happened there? But
Yeah,
anyway.
to Bill Trout, I
Yeah.
think, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, with that being said, let's get into this album. First of all, this is a talk about the album real quick. Kind of very, what do you call it? Very just very weird album. There's nothing really that sticks out. It's like
Yeah,
one big conjoined
it's
mess,
kind
in
of
my
a
opinion.
just kind of generic album cover with
All
their
right,
logo put on it. And it's
but
nothing that really stands out.
it still is better than the RCA versions. But when we get to those, we'll talk about them. But all right, let's
We'll
get to
we'll
this
see.
album.
I might think something differently when we get to the
Ah,
RCA
all right,
version. So we'll see.
all right. So we'll start out with the first song. We'll talk about Witch Wolf, written by James Young. So what do you think about this one, man?
Yeah, I think this is a cool opening track. I don't think it's as good of an opening track as the opening tracks from the last two albums, but I do think it's a good rocker, great vocals and guitar from JY. He co-wrote this with, I believe, Ray Brandel is his name.
Correct.
Um, but I think that I noticed there's a lot of co-writers on this album. In comparison to the last album, where it was basically just Dennis and JC that wrote most of the
Yeah.
last album. I've noticed that almost every track has some kind of co-writer on it from outside the band. Um, but yet again, another great James Young song to open the album. Great vocals and guitar. Overall, I think it's a pretty cool track. What do you think of it?
Yeah, I think it's a really cool opening riff. This has definitely got JY written all over it. And I said it before, I said again, JY was an incredible vocalist, especially during this. I mean, is an incredible vocalist, excuse me, but during this era, he was exceptional, man. I thought his vocals were like so clean, but again, dirty and just rock and rolling, man. So kind of like I said before, it's kind of sad he doesn't do many vocal lead vocals nowadays, but man, he was great back in this time. Yeah, it's just a cool band effort jam song, man. I love Dennis's organ playing throughout. Great guitar riff. John C comes in with this really cool little acoustic riff during that real quiet part in the middle. Just a typical Styx wooden nickel song. It's a great tune. I love this song. So let's move on to a interesting tune written by Dennis, "The Grove of Eglantine." I'm probably mispronouncing that, but what do you got to say about that?
Yeah, this is the one that you were alluding to earlier that is sung about a certain body part on a woman.
Yeah,
And yeah, the lyrics to this or this the lyrics to this song are a bit of a mess. Like you said, Dennis written and the sung. There's a lot of Baroque elements. I mean, it opens up with a harpsichord. It's a
yeah,
little different from what they had done before. But instrumentally, I think this is a great song. I love the instrumentation of this song, like some of the different instruments that they bring in. But lyrically, I think it's awful. But I overall, if you just kind of like just look past some of the lyrics, I think it's a pretty cool song. But I can see why Dennis is like, yeah, I don't know about this one.
right. Yeah, I mean it's cheesy in the lyrics, like you mentioned it, but I think as a song, I think it works. I mean, you mentioned the weird harpsichord opening. I think it might be a little 12 string behind that too. I'm not too sure, but I mean, I think it's a cool song. I mean, typical Dennis vocalist, excuse me, not lyric, Dennis vocal, excuse me, because I keep saying it. Dennis is definitely one of the best vocalists of all time in rock and roll, and his voice shines in this one, in my opinion. Another classic wooden nickel era Styx song, man. I love it, man. Just great piano from Dennis throughout. I think it's an amazing song. Forget the cheesy ass lyrics. It's still a really kick ass song, in my opinion. So, with that being said, let's move on to the next song, which is Young Man. What do you got?
Yeah, we're back to another JY song. This song was co-written by Richard Young. I wasn't sure. I couldn't figure out whether that was a relation, if he was related to James Young at all. But just kind of find it funny they both have the same last name.
Right.
Wasn't sure if that was
Well,
any kind of
it's a pretty popular last name, so who
yeah, but
knows?
I just
Chances,
wasn't
yeah.
sure if there was any kind of relation there. I wasn't able to figure out any if there was. But this is another great JY song in my opinion. I think this song specifically I think this is where JY kind of comes into his classic voice. Because I mentioned on the first two albums, JY kind of sounded a little different from the way he would sound vocally on the A&M records.
Mm.
By this point, it's classic JY. Like you mentioned on the opening track, he was in great voice here. He sounds like classic JY that we'd come to know and love later on the A&M records that got popular. But I think that this is where he kind of really grows into that. You could hear hints of it on the first as what would become his sort of trademark vocal style. But yeah, I think this is another great rockin' song from JY.
Yeah, I have to say if there's an average song during the Wood and Nickel era, I think this one is it. I'm not a huge fan of this song. Um, to me, it just didn't resonate with me as far as the lyrics and everything, and the not the harmony, but just the pace of the song did not really gel with me. I mean, JY's vocals again are on fire. There's some parts that I just don't like. It's not necessarily a skipper by any means, but it's something I don't look forward to on the album. It's got a pretty nice acoustic opening in the beginning, but then after that, it kind of loses me. It's just an average song, in my opinion. But still, it's definitely not a skipper. It's just something I don't look forward to. So with that being said, let's move on to the next song, which we got some John Serluski finally. As bad as this.
You know, we talked about on the first two records that anytime that John Strelowski had a co-write or a vocal, it usually stood out to be some of the better stuff on the albums. His vocals were really good. I don't know if he was just on a bit of a slump here, but I don't think his vocals on this album really stood out to me. I think he sounded a little off vocally beautiful. But that's really about the only thing that I enjoy about this song. I don't like the song itself. I think it's a pretty generic song. I don't really think it had much to bring to the table. And I was wondering while listening to it, because I know what we're going to talk about here in a minute only features JC and the Panazzo brothers. It kind of almost sounded like this song only featured JC and the Panazzo brothers, at least instrumentally. And I don't know if that was necessarily for the betterment of the album, in my opinion. But this song just really didn't do much for me aside from the acoustic playing.
Yeah, I actually really do like this song. I think his vocals are really good on it. I love the sound of his acoustic guitar in this one. And I like the really cool little drum things that John fills in there all throughout. Really blends well with the song, in my opinion. And that slower or faster, slower part with the clean electric guitar comes in. I love that part. I think this is one of JC's better songs, in my opinion. So yeah, this is definitely a great song, in my opinion. All right, with that being said, let's move into the what do you want to call it? The hidden track or
Uh-huh.
comedic track, the classic "Don't Sit Down on the Plexiglass Toilet." Joseph, what do you think about this one, dude?
Yeah, this is a no from me. I I mean, this song is kind of infamous, just for the sheer WTF of it. But I it didn't do anything for me. Um, I'm not even sure why this is on the album. It's like the most left field thing that Styx has possibly ever done. And I guarantee you, that Dennis and probably even JY to this day regret putting it on the album. Um, Considering the fact that neither one of them had anything to do with it, it was just
Yeah.
JC and the Panazzo brothers. Yeah, I, I'd rather leave this one hidden, and I'm yeah, not a fan, not a fan.
Actually, I dig this song. Actually, I think it's funny. Got that cool calypso beat to it. I like the way he's trying to do the accent and the vocals all through it. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of funny. I mean, it just seems like just that they're having a good time doing something and say, "Hey, this sounds cool. Let's throw it in there."
Yeah,
How
I don't know if I needed to hear a song with the lyrics "Wipe your butt with the paper" on my
wipe the
Styx
butt
album.
clean with the paper? Yeah, I think it's I mean, I think it's pretty cool. So it's been cool instrumentations all throughout it. And the capper at the end is when you hear the toilet flushing. I mean, just that it's cool. It's a joke, and it's a cool song that people like to talk about. I noticed I posted something on Sticks World, and it got a lot of conversation going about this song, how funny it is, this and that. And I I don't have any problem with it, but I can see what you're talking about. It's not really a typical Sticks track. And I think that JC brought that, I think, in his lyric writing, especially if you look at the last album when he did um oh shit, kind of my mind's going a blank now. Uh,
One on Styx too.
yeah, sticks to the fuck. I can't think of the name right now. I draw blanks all the time now.
He
Um,
did.
Not a day, but the one after that.
You better ask.
You better ask. Yeah, there's a kind of a comedic tone to that one too.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was pretty much his, shtick, kind of adding some comedy relief to the music back then, which I have no problem with. But like I said before, I get what you mean. It's kind of a goof. All right, so then we'll switch the sides and go to side two, and winner take all, man. What do you think about that one?
Yeah, I think this is a pretty cool opener for side two. It's kind of a poppier rock song. Dennis wrote it with Charles LaFrana, but JY sang it. Kind of like the last album, there was a couple songs that Dennis wrote, but JY sang. It's a cool kind of opening track. It's another one that's a little bit more maybe generic than what we would have gotten on the past few albums, but I think it's a good track nonetheless. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I think it's a great song. I mean, Dennis has that almost like shuffle playing in his piano, which I love. It's definitely I think sounds a little different than the previous songs, and I think it's a great opener for side two. I think that's JC with those screams. There's real loud screams. I think there's a
I
really
think
cool sound.
so.
Yeah. And the Panazzos, man, we can't talk about those guys enough as far as their bass playing and drumming in this album. Yet again, is spectacular. I mean, it's just loaded with great guitar solos, great vocals. I think it's an amazing song. So yeah, definitely off to a good start on side two. Then we move on to the next song, which is 22 Years.
Yeah, this is a pretty interesting one because it was written by JC but sung by Dennis and JY, which is a little bit different than what you would have had on the last few albums. Really a song that all three guys kind of had input into, and honestly, I think it turns out for the best. This is probably my favorite song on the album. Great stomping heavy rocker. This actually features Bill Trout, the owner of the record label, who co-produced the first two albums, on saxophone on this song. He was a saxophone player before he became a record producer and a record label owner, and he plays the saxophone here on this track. And like I said, this is probably my favorite song on the album. Just a great, great kind of, I don't know how you describe it other than it has a good stomp to it. I really, really, really enjoy this one.
Yeah, I agree with all you said there. This is probably my favorite Wooden Nickel song, period. I love everything about this. It kind of has a little of that Let Me Go rock and roll riff to it by Kiss if you think
Yeah,
about it. But
yeah,
it's really cool though, man. Cool straight up rock and roll. Those dual leads from JY and Dennis, which I think this may be the only time they've done that. Oh no, they did Best
they
Thing,
did it
excuse
on.
me.
Yeah,
Yeah. But I wish they would have done it more in their popular
yeah.
days because I think it worked. I mean, to me, when those guys wrote together, some of their best songs, I think,
Hmm.
in my opinion.
I mean, later you would
Um,
see JY and Tommy share vocals
yeah.
quite a bit, but not
Mhm.
ever really ever JY and Dennis.
Yeah. I mean, this has always been just a killer ass rock and roll song to me. Total band effort, in my opinion. Love it. Absolute brilliant song. So let's move on to the next one, which is Jonas Salter.
This is another cool song. Yet again, a song written by Dennis but sung by JY. It's a cool kind of progressive track about pirates. Again, the lyrics are a little bit. If you look and read the lyrics are a little bit hit or miss. But I think it's a cool kind of proggy track. I dig it. It's a pretty cool track.
Yeah, what stands out here in this song is Chuck's bass player. Man, he's using that whole
Definitely.
fretboard all the way through this song. And as a musician, I appreciate stuff that stands out like that. Yeah, again, this is not my favorite song by them, but it's like again, it doesn't suck by any means. I think it's a really cool story in the lyrics. Has that really cool, nice, mellow ending to it. But it's not my favorite that they've done. But again, I would never skip it. I listen to this whole album without skipping a song. But again, it's not my favorite. But we'll move on to the next track, which is the title track. The Serpent is Rising.
Oh yeah. So this one was also written by JC. JC had a lot of writing credits on this album, and he co-wrote it with Charles Lafrano, who co-wrote "Winner Take All" with Dennis earlier on the album. Uh, it was written on the entry for this song that this is a very King Crimson influenced song, and I can definitely hear that if you listen to, especially the instrumentation, very very Robert Fripp style guitar playing, which I think you can kind of hear JC especially emulating that style of guitar playing on this album. I like we had mentioned in the past two reviews, JC was definitely the more progressive leaning member of the
Right.
band who would definitely have had a lot of background listening to artists like King Crimson and being influenced by that style of playing. And I think he does a great job here on this song of playing in that style. I think the instrumental part is great. Of course, yet another example of some sexual innuendo in the lyrics. The serpent is rising, of course. We can all imagine exactly what that's about. And then, especially when you follow it with a piece called Krakatoa, um, I'm sure our imaginations all go to the same place. But
Right.
I think this is a pretty cool track. I don't think it's as good as some of the epics, kind of epic progressive songs on the last album. In general, I think that's kind of my review of this entire album. Is it follows a similar kind of pattern as the last album, but not as good. Um, but I think it's still a good track. I think that JC shines on this one, and I think that it's definitely an example of being able to hear his influences, especially.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is a great song, actually. I love the guitar riffs all through this and that nasty vocals on this. It's kind of like some world leader on stage giving a really intense, mean, one of those speeches that just, really, really, really get in your head. I think his vocal delivery was amazing on this one. Love the changes throughout yet again. The acoustic solo is amazing. I think this is a great, great, great title track, man. Great work from JC on this one. So we'll move on to the next song, which is interesting. I don't know what you call it, a song or whatever you want to call it, but we're talking about Krakatoa, man. What do you think about it?
So I was doing a little bit of interesting reading into the kind of history of not only this song but who co-wrote it. And the co-writers I never heard before, but when I looked them up, I found a lot of interesting things. This was written by JC. It was a spoken word piece that he speaks, and it was co-written by the songwriting team of Beaver and Krause, who were very influential in electronic music. They are actually credited with very early innovations in the Moog synthesizer. Um, they got a lot of like when the Moog kind of started picking up steam in the late 60s or early 70s, they were behind a lot of it. They did a lot of movie soundtracks. I saw some pretty famous movies as well. They did soundtrack pieces for and did a lot of instrumental work in general. But they're the team that was kind of behind this with JC. They are, I guess, responsible for turning it from just him reciting this poem into an actual kind of ambient noise sort of thing. And it's another thing where it's like, do I expect this or really want it on a Styx album? Not necessarily. I think it's a cool track though. I think it's kind of cool to see where JC's mind was at just trying to do something like this because it's so out there and different. I mean, he can go from two more traditional songs that he sings on this album. And of course, he also wrote 22 Years, which we both praised to the heavens.
Mm.
And then he can also do Plexiglass Toilet and Krakatoa on the same album. And it's
Yeah.
kind of like, man, this guy, I don't, what was going on with this dude in 1973? But yeah, I don't necessarily think it fits great on a Styx album, but I think it's still a pretty cool idea.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind it. I think it's kind of cool. Actually, I love JC's delivery through it and the way he speaks. It gets like more and more intense as it goes. And the effects that go along with it in the background are really cool. As a matter of fact, the very ending of it, I think that's the same riff the movie companies used to test the volume before a movie started. That
Mm-hmm. The THX thing.
yeah, I don't know if it's the same, but if not, it's pretty much pretty close to that actually.
I'm trying to remember, I read something that it was pulled from something, and I can't remember what it was. But that
Yeah,
little thing at the end was pulled from something. It might honestly be the same thing. I'm not
yeah,
sure.
it's if not, it's damn close anyway. Yeah, I think
Hmm.
it's pretty cool, man. I mean, you're right about JC. I mean, he adds a lot of different elements to the band. He did, I should say. And yeah, I think his stuff is actually kind of a, it was interesting changes throughout his career with Styx, I think. And I enjoyed it. So, with that being said, let's move on to the last song, which again is kind of an interesting way to close out album. Hallelujah chorus by
Yeah.
George Friedrich Handel's Messiah.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, of course, everyone knows this piece.
Yeah.
It's been famously used in whether you're a classical music fan or not. It's been famously
Yeah.
used in pop culture. And this is the one that I mentioned earlier was actually recorded in a cathedral in Chicago. Dennis was playing on the pipe organ in the cathedral, and all five members of the band are on vocals, which is the first time that that would happen in their discography. Seems it was kind of just like an off the cuff kind of recording. They decided to put it on the album. Uh, and it's another one that's like, well, this is kind of out of nowhere, isn't it? But
Yeah.
it sounds nice. They do a good job with it. I'm not exactly sure why it's certainly no fanfare for the common man. I'll say that.
Yeah.
They certainly do a lot better integrating fanfare for the common man into their music than they do Handel's Messiah. But yeah. Oh, and I also wanted to mention I wanted to say when we were still talking about Krakatoa, um, we were talking about how much of an influence John Serluski had on this album. It's kind of be funny next week when we talk about the next album because he had pretty much no influence on the
No.
next album. So he kind of threw everything at the wall on this album. And then I think it was kind of what we talked about. Dennis and JY both said, okay, let's not do that again. And I
Yeah,
think
this
they kind of pulled the reins away from him a
yeah,
little bit on the next
yeah.
album.
this may have been the downfall of, not the downfall, but the end of JC,
Yeah, because I mean,
and
what
Styx.
he doesn't really have anything to do with the next album aside from playing, and then when we get to
Mm.
Equinox, he has
Yeah,
one track and then Prelude 12.
yeah,
So I mean, he really this was kind of JC's last hurrah here.
it
And
was.
like we said, he kind of just he went in a lot of different directions, and I think that might have had something to do with why. If it was the fact that Dennis and JY just kind of took the reins from him a little bit, I think this album might be part of the reason why. As much as we
Yeah.
might enjoy certain parts of it.
In a weird way, like you were talking about the Serpent is Rising, Krakatoa, there definitely, I think, is a kind of a sexual connection with these last three songs, in my opinion. It's
Yeah,
like Serpent is Rising, we know what that means. Krakatoa,
a
and then
volcano erupting. Yeah.
Hallelujah. It's like if you think about it, it all kind of can go together. I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
they meant to do that, but I think maybe they probably did. But
Considering that Serpent is Rising and Krakatoa were both written by John Serluski, I would
right,
imagine that there's definitely at least a connection between those two. And then I
right.
can't imagine that you end it with the Hallelujah chorus and that doesn't come into your mind.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's a kind of a cool way to end it, I think. It's nothing great from him, but you mentioned before it's the whole band singing, which is a rarity throughout Styx's catalog. So I don't mind it. It's pretty cool. It's only 2 minutes long, so like I said, I don't skip any songs on this album, but there's some I'll probably maybe space out and think of something else as it's playing sometimes. But I think it's a pretty cool tune. Again, this was like with their second poorest selling album, I think.
Yeah, this one tanked. I think it charted at 192 on the Billboard
Yeah.
charts, and that was
Mhm.
their second lowest charting album ever.
Yeah.
In their entire career. It has, I believe, somebody wrote that it hasn't even sold 100,000 copies, much less.
Right.
We all know gold is 500,000, platinum's a million. This one hasn't even sold 100,000 copies,
Yeah.
which that's like an album that would be released today would sell that many physical
Yeah.
copies. An album released all the way back in 1973. This thing didn't do anything,
Right.
and I think it was kind of I really I want to do a little bit more research and find out how exactly the band got signed by A&M Records because, like I said, Lady didn't break until after they had already
Mhm.
signed with A&M, so they
Right.
weren't doing anything here. To the fact that they ended up after the next album getting signed by A&M, who were at that point a fairly large record company, were fairly
Right.
doing pretty well. I mean, they had if you look through the classics series of greatest hits albums, you look at all those different artists they had on their label at the time that were fairly high selling artists. And it's kind of interesting how Styx ended up on there after four albums that really just didn't do much of anything.
Yeah. Well, we'll say that for another show. I do have some knowledge of it, but we'll say that for another show of why A&M signed them. All right, so that's our review of The Serpent is Rising. What's funny about this? I was talking to a friend the other day, and I kept calling it The Serpent and the Rainbow. I'm very good at confusing certain things. You see, well, The Serpent and the Rainbow is that weird movie from the 80s, which I kind of love that movie, actually. So I actually got it right this time. I said The Serpent is Rising like 20 times to make sure I got it right. But all in all, is this something you go back to every now and then listen to, or hard pass?
I I wouldn't say it's necessarily either. It's definitely not a hard pass. I think like I said, there's quite a lot to enjoy about this album. Um, at least I would say at least half of this album I really enjoyed.
Hmm.
But there's some stuff I'm just kind of like, eh. Um, a lot, unfortunately, and it's a lot of the JC stuff I just couldn't get into, especially the stuff on side one. Um, I think side two ultimately is stronger overall than side one is for me. Um, I think this is, I think just because it's all their own songwriting, I'd give it a little bit of a nod over the first album, but I don't think it's anywhere near as good as the second album was. I think the
Right.
second album was such a strong album. We both praised that endlessly
Hmm.
last time. And I really do think that that was, and until we're proven otherwise, that was the high point of the Wooden Nickel era.
Right.
We'll see if that stays true when we talk about Man of Miracles next week, but I think this was unfortunately a little bit of a step down for them. I think they had a little bit more of a united vision on Styx 2 of what they wanted to be. And this album kind of seems like a step back almost into a little bit more, um, well, let's do this, and let's do this, and let's do this, and let's do this, and put it all on one album.
Right.
It doesn't have that consistency that the last album had. But I still think it's a pretty good album. If I gave the first album a 7, I'd probably give this one at least a 7 as well.
Mhm.
Um, um, I at least give them credit for sticking with original songwriting. As we'll see, there's a cover on the next album. Um, so they kind of lapse back into that a little bit. But every single one of these songs, except for the Hallelujah chorus, has at least one member of the band on the writing credits, even though quite a few of them have a co writer that is not in the band. They at least all do have some involvement from a band member. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's something I'd go back to a lot, but I wouldn't say it's a hard pass either.
Yeah, I go back every now and then listen to all their stuff on vinyl. I have the Styx compilation, the Wood and Nickel Styx. You got that too, and
Mm-hmm.
that's the one I go to more. I can listen to every one of them at the same time. I mean, I don't have to change sides or put a new album in. So I go to that one a lot more. And yeah, I mean, oh shit, I agree with everything you said about this being better than Styx 2. And but the cool part about it is it's only 3 months after
Mm-hmm.
Styx 2 was recorded. So damn, they must have wrote these songs in a hurry or had them, already written before that and didn't make Styx 2 maybe. That could be a possibility as well. I don't know. But I know you're not a huge fan of John C stuff on this album, but I absolutely love it, dude. I think like I said it before earlier, I think he adds a different not necessarily, well, it is kind of comical, but uh
On the
stuff
one
that
song
you
especially, yeah.
stuff you talk about on chat groups about this song is so this and that, like don't sit down in the plexiglass toilet. Just fun to talk about. I mean, it's a conversation starter in my opinion. So I don't mind it. I think it's kind of funny. But I agree with you. I think it's definitely not even near in the same stratosphere as their last album, Styx 2. All right, so that's our review of Styx, the Serpent is Rising. Thank you, everybody, for watching and subscribing and watching the videos, and a lot of good stuff coming up. Our next review will be their fourth wooden and final Wooden Nickel album, Man of Miracles, which should be a fun talk, you know, hear what you say about that one. And then we got a great show after that. We're gonna leave it at, we're not gonna announce it now, but we will next week when we get more details on it. But anyway, Joseph, man, thank you for, as always, for being part of this show. Love hearing your Sticks knowledge, man. Fucking, I enjoy this so much. So thank you very much, everybody. Y'all have a good day and rock out.